On a spring afternoon in 2024, what should have been a joyful birthday celebration turned into an unimaginable nightmare. 2 children were killed, and more than a dozen others were left injured, their lives forever altered by the reckless actions of one woman. Marcella Chidister, the woman behind the wheel, offered only excuses, but the question remains. Was this a tragic accident? Or was it something far darker? What truly happened that day, and who should be held accountable? Marcella Chidister, the 66-year-old woman who drove into the crowd, seemed unfazed, offering nothing but excuses for the deadly crash. Was it truly an accident? Or was it something far more sinister? A story of a woman driven by a dark force that no one saw coming. Today, we're going to explore the chilling details of this tragedy and the fight for justice that followed. Before we begin, our hearts go out to the families of the victims, especially the parents who tragically lost their children in this horrific accident. The pain and grief they must be experiencing are unimaginable, and no words can truly capture the depth of their loss. We stand with them in this difficult time, hoping for justice and healing as they navigate the aftermath of this heartbreaking tragedy. Welcome to True Crime Diaries, where we dive deep into the most gripping true crime stories, uncovering the mysteries and untold details behind each case. If you're passionate about justice, human stories, and the dark side of our world, you're in the right place. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new case. Join us as we explore more chilling, real-life stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. The Swan Boat Club in Newport, Michigan is known as a peaceful retreat, nestled along the shoreline of Lake Erie. For years, it has served as a gathering spot for the local community, a place where friends and family gather to celebrate. On April 20th, 2024, the Swan Boat Club's pavilion was filled with excitement as Kristen Sigler, a longtime bartender at the club, hosted her son's 3rd birthday party. The theme of the party was every child's dream, a circus extravaganza, complete with a bouncy house, face painting, and a hot dog stand. More than 80 people arrived, bringing gifts and cards for the birthday boy. The festivities began at 1 p.m., and by 3 p.m., the party was in full swing. That was when the unthinkable happened. At approximately 3:03 p.m., a loud crash interrupted the singing of Happy Birthday. In the blink of an eye, the atmosphere shifted from celebration to terror. Marcella Chidister's SUV, traveling at 44 miles per hour, slammed into the side of the building, plowing through the crowd. People were sent flying, others were trapped, and chaos erupted as the vehicle crashed 25 feet into the building's wall. From the wreckage emerged Marcella Chidister, dazed and disoriented. The sounds of screaming and crying filled the air as partygoers scrambled to locate the injured and confirm their safety. As the dust settled, some victims were pulled from under the vehicle while others lay motionless in the debris. Emergency calls flooded in. Within minutes, first responders arrived, and what they found was beyond comprehension. Marcella, who had been an active member of the Swan Boat Club for years, seemed almost detached from the severity of the situation. She was seated calmly in the midst of the chaos, her body unscathed, though her demeanor was one of confusion. It was soon revealed that she had a history of seizures, and she explained to police that she could not remember what had happened, attributing the crash to a possible seizure. But was that the whole story?
What happened?
I passed out.
Okay. Have you been feeling ill or anything like that?
Yes.
What kind of medical conditions do you have?
Seizures.
Seizures? Okay. Going around here?
No, not really. I pulled into the parking lot and I thought I was driving up to the boat club, and evidently I was driving right into the pavilion.
Which direction did you drive from?
I live right down the street.
Okay, so you were coming from that way?
Yes.
This way? When you got to the parking lot, what happened?
I don't remember.
You don't remember?
I don't remember.
Okay. Do you think there's a reason you don't remember? Did something happen, or?
You know what? I have these seizures, and
Okay. Do you have anything where it says like maybe that does your doctor permit you to drive and everything?
I'm cleared to drive now, and I don't have my purse with me, but I do have a card in my purse.
Okay. When's the last time you had a seizure that you know of?
March.
In March?
Yeah. I had it at home, and then I did have one when I was in the hospital.
When you're in the hospital? Okay. Do you think, is your normal behavior when you have a seizure, is it have lapses of memory? Do you,
yes.
That? Okay. So once you got to the parking lot, you don't remember anything?
I don't.
Okay.
As authorities began their investigation, they quickly realized that something was amiss. Marcella's recollection of events was vague and inconsistent. Investigators began combing through the evidence.
At Verna's, where did you go to?
Went to the boat club.
Straight to the boat club?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so...
They were having a birthday party.
So you woke up in the police car?
Yeah.
Okay, and then basically... we didn't know the events after that?
No, I don't recall anything prior to that at all.
Okay, so that's why I'm trying to get a full account of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So from 12:10, we didn't go directly to the boat club. We went home. Did we go to the store? Did we go to a friend's house? What did we do during that time?
I don't know. I don't know. I know that the party started at 3 o'clock, the birthday party. So I was there a little bit before that.
Surveillance footage, witness testimonies, and physical evidence from the scene. What they discovered painted a far darker picture than Marcella had portrayed. While Marcella insisted that she had only consumed 1 glass of wine earlier that day, the facts quickly contradicted her story. The first clue came when video footage from a neighbor's camera showed Marcella leaving her home around 2:50 p.m., just minutes before the crash. In the footage, she could be seen stumbling slightly as she made her way to her car. This was a red flag that something was not right. Upon further investigation, law enforcement discovered that Marcella had been drinking throughout the day. A bottle of wine had been purchased from a local store earlier in the morning, and empty bottles were found in her home. But perhaps most damning of all was the data retrieved from her vehicle. Marcella had been accelerating as she approached the pavilion, increasing her speed to 44 miles per hour just moments before crashing into the building. Investigators also found that her foot had been fully pressing the accelerator pedal, indicating that she was deliberately speeding into the party. But what was the motive? Was this a tragic accident, or was there something more sinister at play? Marcella's behavior raised more questions than answers. She seemed to be deliberately downplaying the severity of the situation, leaving investigators to wonder whether there was more to the story than she was letting on. As emergency responders began to assess the wreckage, confusion and panic still hung heavily in the air. Partygoers worked together to free those trapped beneath the SUV, their voices ringing out in urgency. "Is everyone all right? Where's my daughter?" cried a woman, her hands shaking as she searched the crowd for her child. Another man, his face pale with shock, checked his children's vital signs before he ran to help others. Diane Medina, a boat club member, was found unconscious under the vehicle. She had been attending the party with her granddaughters, who miraculously weren't harmed. Diane's injuries were severe. She would undergo multiple surgeries in the coming months. Leah Stiff, 18, a cousin of the birthday boy, was another victim. Her injuries were grave. She spent several weeks in the hospital recovering from broken bones and internal damage. And then there was the heartbreak of Mariah Dodds, the mother who had just placed a cake pop in front of her children, Alana and Zayn. The last thing she remembered was her children's excited faces as they prepared to run toward the bouncy house. When Mariah awoke in the hospital, the world around her had changed forever. 2 of her children were gone, Alana, just 8 years old, and Zayn, only 5. The pain was unbearable, and the grief overwhelming. Her tears fell silently as she processed the heart-wrenching news. 2 of my babies, gone, Mariah whispered to her sister. The words felt too heavy to utter, but the reality of her loss was unshakable. Meanwhile, Marcella Chidister was being questioned by law enforcement. She sat quietly in the interrogation room, her face blank, but there was an undercurrent of discomfort as she struggled to recall the details of the crash. "I don't remember," Marcella repeated, her voice shaky. "I don't know what happened. I've had seizures before, and sometimes I lose my memory. Maybe that's what happened here."
Are the most hated person in the United States.
Why is that?
You drove your car into a kid's birthday party and killed 2 kids.
Oh, no.
And many more are at the hospital in critical condition right now.
Oh, no.
Adults as well.
I'm looking for the truth, Marcella. The truth needs to come out because you are the most hated person in the whole United States right now. I guarantee this is national news. You are the most, so you need to change that narrative right here. You need to change it. There's only one way you can change it, and that's by telling the truth. I've been doing this for a long time. I've sat across the table from killers before, like really, really bad killers. You're not that person.
And I don't remember. Honestly, I do not remember. I would think I would remember something like that.
Well, you're not being truthful about how much you drank. You're not.
But her explanation didn't add up. Officers had already gathered evidence from the scene, and the severity of the crash painted a clear picture. Marcella had not simply lost control due to a seizure. The data from her SUV's black box told a different story. She had been accelerating, not braking, at the moment of impact. "Marcella, you were going 44 miles per hour when you hit that building. The children, they were just having a birthday party. You were in a place filled with families, and you drove right into them. How do you explain that?" asked Detective Jameson, his voice stern yet sympathetic.
Have you been drinking at all today?
A little bit, yes.
Okay. When's the last time you had something to drink?
Probably half an hour ago.
Half an hour ago? What do you drink? On a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being like you're stone cold sober, you can drive perfectly, 10 being you're passed out drunk. Where do you think you're at right now?
7.
A 7? Okay. Do you think you're okay to drive?
I wouldn't want to drive.
You would let you drive?
Marcella's eyes filled with tears, but she remained silent. The shock of the moment seemed to paralyze her, and as she sat there, her words became less and less coherent. Her initial claims that she was unaware of the severity of her actions started to fall apart. As the investigation continued, more evidence came to light. Surveillance footage from the Swan Boat Club showed Marcella's erratic movements as she approached the venue. Footage from a neighbor's security camera captured her stumbling out of her house around 2:50 p.m., just minutes before the crash. The timestamp on the footage, though slightly incorrect, provided a key window of time that lined up with Marcella's final actions. But it wasn't just her stumbling that raised alarm. The vehicle's data recorder revealed that Marcella had been accelerating as she approached the pavilion, and even more startling, she had been speeding up just seconds before the crash. This was not the behavior of someone who had lost control due to a medical episode. A critical moment in the investigation came when law enforcement examined Marcella's blood alcohol content, BAC. While she had insisted that she had only consumed 1 glass of wine during lunch, the lab results told a much darker story. Marcella's BAC was found to be a staggering 0.18% more than double the legal limit. This finding shocked everyone, including the investigators who had been trying to piece together her actions. But even more troubling was the presence of gabapentin, a central nervous system depressant, in her blood. Marcella had been prescribed this medication for leg seizures, but mixing it with alcohol could explain why she was so disoriented and confused at the scene. To make matters worse, Marcella had made a statement to officers at the crash site, admitting that she had been drinking and that she didn't feel fit to drive. Yet, she had still chosen to get behind the wheel. Why? What motivated her to take the wheel of a vehicle after drinking heavily and knowing her condition? The community's reaction to Marcella's actions was swift and filled with anger. Families who had attended the birthday party were shaken to the core. The families of the victims, particularly Brian Phillips, who had lost 2 children in the crash, expressed their fury and disbelief at Marcella's lack of remorse. "I can't even look at her," Brian Phillips said, his voice cracking. "She took everything from me. She destroyed our lives in an instant, and now she acts like it was no big deal." By March 2025, the court trial was set to begin, and the entire town of Newport had their eyes fixed on the proceedings. This was no longer just a local tragedy. It had become a national story, the question on everyone's minds. What would justice look like for Marcella Chidister? If you're enjoying this story so far, make sure to give us a like and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think justice will be served in this case, or is there more to the story? We'd love to hear your opinions. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our future true crime investigations. Prosecutors began by laying out the facts that were undeniable. Marcella had been under the influence of alcohol and medication at the time of the crash. The forensic evidence was clear. Her blood alcohol content was over twice the legal limit, and she had been speeding at the time of impact. Moreover, the evidence suggested she had been drinking wine throughout the day, well beyond what she had claimed. The defense team, led by Bill Kolovos, continued to assert that the crash was an unfortunate accident caused by a medical episode, one that Marcella had no control over. They argued that Marcella's seizures, combined with alcohol, could have led to the crash, and that the blood alcohol results were flawed. They questioned the integrity of the blood test, suggesting that improper handling of the sample could have resulted in skewed results. Kolovos took every opportunity to cast doubt on the prosecution's case, even going so far as to claim that acetone, a chemical found in nail polish remover, had been present in Marcella's blood sample. He suggested that this could have been a result of fermentation, which would have led to an artificially inflated BAC reading. But the prosecution wasn't swayed. They called multiple experts to testify, including Samantha Bachum, the supervisor at the Michigan State Police Toxicology Lab, who confirmed that the blood sample was handled correctly and that no irregularities were found. There was simply no way to deny the evidence. Marcella had been intoxicated, and she had been in control of the vehicle at the time of the crash. As the trial progressed, the victims' families were given the chance to speak. The most emotional testimony came from Mariah Dodds, whose 2 children, Alana and Zayn, had been killed in the crash. Mariah's voice wavered with grief as she recounted her memories of that fateful day. "I'll never forget their faces. We were about to go play in the bouncy house. And then everything changed," she said, her eyes filled with tears. "I didn't even get to say goodbye." Her words echoed through the courtroom, striking at the hearts of everyone present. She continued, recounting the pain of losing her children and how the event had shattered her entire family.
"An evil and sick individual in my eyes. If Michigan offered the death penalty, I would highly recommend it for her. She is a danger to society, and I feel society would be a danger to her. She makes me feel like she is untouchable, and I do not like that. I have raised awareness for the dangers of drinking and driving, and I plan to keep doing so by using my own story as an example of what can happen.
The defense's Bill Colivos, visibly shaken by Mariah's testimony, stood to cross-examine. But instead of continuing with the case, he paused, offering his condolences.
I asked her, why am I here? And she said there's been an accident, and it occurred to my brain that how I was in a building the last time I remember at a birthday party. And then I freaked out because it hit me, where's my kids at? And then that's when she told me that Jaden was, life flew to a hospital and Zayn and Alana were no longer there.
I can't imagine what you've gone through, Colivos said, his voice tight with emotion. This is a tragedy, and I am truly sorry for your loss. His brief moment of empathy did nothing to soften the harsh reality for the victims' families. For them, no apology, no amount of sorrow could undo the damage done.
I lost my son in September. He died peacefully at home. He was older. And every time I work on your case, I think you go. And I think of your children. And you have my deepest sympathy. And I'm human. Might be a defense attorney, but I'm human. And you seem like a much stronger person than me. My prayers are with you and your family. I wish you the best. People keep telling me God has a plan. Yes, that's what we got to do. So I just wanted to come out of uniform for a minute and tell you, true heartfelt, that I feel very bad for you and your family. It's a club you don't want to belong to. And I don't have any questions for you. You've gone through enough in life.
But the real shock came when new evidence was revealed. Investigators had discovered surveillance footage from Marcella's home that captured her returning from the store with bottles of wine early in the morning. One of the most damning pieces of evidence was a timestamp showing that Marcella had been drinking all day long. The footage showed her walking into the house, holding a 187-milliliter bottle of wine. Just an hour later, she was seen returning to the kitchen to discard the empty bottle. Over the course of the day, she continued drinking, not just one glass, but several more. At 2:10 p.m., the camera captured Marcella pouring herself a large glass of red wine just a half hour before the crash. By the time she had driven to the Swan Boat Club, Marcella was well over the legal limit. Yet she continued to assert that she had consumed only one glass of wine earlier that day, a story that was quickly unraveling. The defense, still clinging to the possibility that Marcella was not fully aware of her actions, faced an uphill battle. The prosecution brought in a local store clerk who confirmed that Marcella had purchased 2 full-size bottles of red wine and 4 smaller bottles of Pinot Grigio early that morning. When police searched Marcella's home, they found a garbage can filled with empty wine bottles, evidence that contradicted her claims. The timeline was clear. Marcella had been drinking throughout the day and had actively consumed alcohol before getting behind the wheel of her SUV. By this point, the evidence was overwhelming. The defense had failed to discredit the BAC results, and Marcella's version of events had been shattered. The jury had the facts in front of them, and it was now up to them to decide her fate.
I am Mariah's sister. What he had said about getting injections in her legs for something, knowing that with or without drinking, you're still putting people in harm's way, because with muscles and everything. You can't control something. Why operate a vehicle knowing you're taking medicine that drinking will affect it? I was there. I seen it work. My daughter, my mom, my sister, my nephew from the opposite side of the family, my sister's 3 children. We were supposed to be planning a birthday party for Zayn, not a funeral. Knowing you have medical conditions, you should never get behind a wheel whether you are drinking or not. Taking medications, they tell you not to drink, but she still chose to drink. She still chose to get into that vehicle. I will never look at the month of April the same ever again. My birthday was a few days prior. The babies were just at my house. My niece with her flawless curly hair loved to dance. My nephew, he always hated my truck was dirty. I cleaned my truck out just for him. He loved jujitsus. He loved cracking jokes. Eminem was his idol. They walked into that birthday party having a fun time.
What do you think? Was Marcella truly unaware of what she was doing, or was she simply trying to escape the consequences of her actions?
Ryan, I've been thinking about what I was going to say to you for over a year. I was a terrible, terrible tragedy. I can't help it. Say I'm so very, very sorry for the loss of your children. I pray for them every day. And I would ask that their father would also forgive me, as well as people that were injured. I never meant to harm those children or anyone that was involved in the accident. And the only thing that I can say is, I'm so very sorry. And I never, ever meant to come across as not being sorrowful. I've asked the Lord to forgive me. And I ask that you at least look into your heart, and at some point, if you can possibly forgive me, I would appreciate that so much. I have a little verse that I want to read. It said, the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercy never ends. And that comes from Lamentations 3:22. And I hope the Lord will show you some mercy and help you get over your terrible tragedy, loss of your children.
The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours before returning a verdict. Guilty on all counts. Marcella Chidister was convicted of second-degree murder for the deaths of Alana and Zayn Phillips. She was also found guilty of 5 counts of operating a vehicle while intoxicated, causing serious injury. Marcella was sentenced to 25 to 50 years in prison, a sentence that felt like justice to the victims' families, but could never replace the lives that were lost.
Find as follows. Count 1, guilty of murder in the second degree of Alana Grace Phillips. Count 2, guilty of murder in the second degree of Zayn Isaac Phillips. Count 3, guilty of operating while intoxicated or operating while visibly impaired, causing the death of Alana Grace Phillips. Count 4, guilty of operating while intoxicated or operating while visibly impaired, causing the death of Zayn Isaac Phillips. While intoxicated or operating while visibly impaired, causing serious impairment of a body function to Mariah Lynn Dodds. Count 6, guilty of operating while intoxicated or operating while visibly impaired, causing serious impairment of a body function to Edward Thomas Smothers.
For Brian Phillips, the father of the two deceased children, there was a sense of closure, but the pain would linger for a lifetime.
Do you feel with this verdict you're able to have some type of peace?
After I leave here, I'm going to their gravesite and let them know how today went. I will never get peace. I never will find peace with this, but I'm glad that the verdict came back on all counts. I am happy with that verdict.
Marcella's defense attorney, Bill Kolivos, who had passionately fought for his client, vowed to appeal the verdict. He believed that Marcella's conviction was unjust and that the evidence presented in the trial was flawed. "This fight is not over," Kolivos said in his closing statement. "We will continue to pursue justice for Marcella." But for the families of the victims, justice had already been served. The two children who lost their lives that day would never be forgotten. As for Marcella, she now faced the consequences of her actions that had torn apart so many lives. Will Marcella's conviction be overturned on appeal, or will she spend the rest of her life behind bars? Stay tuned as this case continues to unfold. Marcella Chidister's sentence marked the official end of the trial, but for the families affected, the aftermath of the crash would continue to linger long after the gavel fell. Her 25 to 50-year prison sentence was a victory for justice, but it was no consolation for the lives that had been lost and the families that would never be whole again. For Brian Phillips, the father of Alana and Zayn, the sense of relief was coupled with sorrow. "It will never bring them back," he said, his voice heavy with grief. His children were gone, and no amount of justice could heal the pain of their absence. For Mariah Dodds, the mother of the two young victims, the sentence was another step toward healing. But how could you ever fully heal from the loss of two children, both taken in the prime of their young lives? As she sat in the courtroom, tears in her eyes, she whispered to the jury, "I can never forgive her, but this is the justice my children deserve." In the years to come, the impact of Marcella's actions would continue to ripple through the community. The Swan Boat Club, once a place of joy and laughter, would always carry the weight of that horrific day. Many of the survivors, including Diane Medina, Leah Stiff, and Jaden, would carry physical and emotional scars for the rest of their lives. But through it all, the community of Newport stood together. They rallied around the victims' families, supporting them in ways that only a small, tight-knit town could. Despite the tragedy that had struck, the town would remain resilient, and the families, though torn apart by loss, would find strength in each other. Marcella's legal battles weren't over, though. Even after her conviction, her defense attorney, Bill Kolivos, stood by her side, vowing to appeal the verdict. "We will continue to fight," Kolivos said, though he knew the odds were stacked against them. Despite the overwhelming evidence against Marcella, Kolivos believed that the case wasn't as straightforward as it seemed. He would argue that the blood alcohol content test was faulty and that her medical history, her seizure condition, should have played a larger role in her defense. But the prosecution had already painted a clear picture of reckless negligence, showing that Marcella was well aware of her actions before getting behind the wheel. As her case moves forward through appeals, the question remains, will Marcella ever face a full reckoning for the lives she destroyed? For the victims and their families, the fight for justice may be over, but the emotional toll will remain. And as for Marcella, she will spend the rest of her life behind bars, reflecting on the decisions that led to the tragic loss of two innocent children. What do you think? Was Marcella's conviction just, or do you believe the defense's claims were valid? Should she have been sentenced to life in prison, or was 25 to 50 years too lenient? Comment below with your thoughts, and let's keep the conversation going. Don't forget to like this video if you believe in justice for the victims, and share it to raise awareness of the consequences of reckless behavior on the road.
a burial, a service yet, and this lady's drinking coffee at home with her family, with her loved ones. Personally, will never forget the feeling, the cries from a grown man when he finds out his kids have been taken from him.
In the end, the story of Marcella Chidister and the tragedy at the Swan Boat Club serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the devastating consequences of one reckless decision. A birthday party, meant to be a time of joy and celebration, was forever marred by the actions of a woman who was supposed to be a member of the community, someone trusted by her neighbors. What if Marcella had made different choices that day? Could this tragedy have been avoided? Or was this an accident waiting to happen? These are questions that may never have clear answers. But one thing is certain. Justice has been served, but the scars of that day will never fully heal. The town of Newport, the families affected, and Marcella herself will have to live with the consequences of that fateful afternoon for the rest of their lives. The story of Marcella Chidister is one that will be remembered for years to come. It's a tale of loss, grief, and the struggle for justice. As the survivors continue to rebuild their lives and the legal system moves forward with appeals, we can only hope that the lessons learned from this devastating incident will resonate with others, reminding us all of the importance of responsibility, caution, and accountability on the road. Thank you for joining us in this heartbreaking journey. Be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for more real crime stories, where we continue to explore the human side of justice and tragedy. Until next time, stay aware, stay safe, and always look a little deeper. This is True Crime Diaries, where every story has a pulse,